Hello, everyone, and welcome back to D&D&D&D&D, campaign number 2 of Black Ink and Blue Blood. When we last left off, our party, having reached the city of Purrha in the Shadow Lily Confederacy, immediately got into some shenanigans following the strange, mysterious, seemingly arcane death of their goblin contact that had brought them together. Temporarily going their separate ways, the party tended to personal business throughout the city before semi-reuniting in the city of Purrha's graveyard that doubles as a tar pit in the savannah. Finding the graveyard burning, Gil and Lucian fought a giant amalgam necromantic monstrosity known as the Tarbone, which was briefly Littleite, the fire put out, Littleite again, and then finally killed. Meanwhile, Zephyr, the party's rogue, took advantage of the chaos to attempt a raid on the city guard's treasury, only to be met with a mysterious wizard who offered him a magical item in exchange for a favor that he will call in at a later date. Taking his hoard and running as he sort of accidentally set the building on fire, Zephyr made his way to the graveyard before suspicion could be directed to him. And as the party regrouped, Lucian and Zephyr went to investigate the still burning church towards the tail end of the graveyard, only to find it burnt almost to the ground, with only one wall remaining, with burning letters spelling out, "Found you." And that's where we will pick up. Lucian and Zephyr, you see the sight before you, the various priests of the church tending to those who were caught in the flames, pulling people free from the rubble, most of them not paying too much mind to the burning display as they're more focused on the tasks at hand. But you guys can see the letters burning bright against the night sky.
Lucian is just, her eyes are right on the words. Does she recognize the handwriting?
Make a history check.
Okay. Shit. It's a natural one.
Oh,
You're just so in shock that as soon as the thought crosses your mind to try and put a name or a face to the calligraphy, it just escapes you as you're just stunned and in shock.
She's just gonna drop to her knees and just start involuntarily crying.
Zephyr, you watch as your elf companion breaks down at the display, uh, seeming very emotional, whether at the destruction of the church or at the burning display before you.
hmm. All right. I guess Zephyr's going to get her attention by pulling out his bell, ringing it near her, just to hopefully kind of snap her back into reality.
All right. Does Lucian respond?
She just seems to be lost in thought, just staring at the wreckage and possibly the words, trying to, you know, wrap her mind around it.
And I would like to see at this point, Gil would come up with to them.
All right. Zephyr, as your bell ringing does not appear to be making any impact, you turn to see Gil approaching with several of the guards, a few of which you recognize from the patrols that had accosted you guys outside the warehouse. Following behind Gil, immediately rushing to the aid of the priests and bishop of the church to assist people who were caught in the flames.
Hmm.
As they're running by, she seems to kind of snapped out of her whatever is happening, and she rises to her feet, and she makes a beeline towards the bishop who she saw earlier that day.
Priestess Priscilla. Make a perception check. It is the middle of the night, and everyone is very scattered to see if you can find her.
Okay, perception. 12.
It takes a bit of searching, but you do remember what she looked like and her rather distinctive uniform. And with a bit of searching, you do find her being tended to by the lycanthrope priest who she had addressed as Brother Lucas. As you approach, you see that the left side of her face is heavily burned. It does not look like it will scar, but it is very noticeable, and her eye is swollen shut as the priest tends to her light wounds that seem mostly directed on the head and face. And as you approach, she looks you over quickly and holds out a hand to take your own. Oh, thank the gods you are safe.
I don't take her hand. I just stare down at her. What did you do?
One more time, sorry.
She said, what did you do?
She raises a hand placatingly and shakes her head. We did nothing. Shortly after you left, we attended to our usual services until nightfall. But some of the priests and bishops began to get panicked, saying they saw a figure nearby. What did Brother Lucas? What did they say that he looked like? The lycanthrope's ears kind of twitch and he turns towards you and gives a nod. Red armor with a gold cloak and a curved blade.
Mm-hmm.
We do not know who the stranger was or if he was of ill intent. All we know is that the moment we heard a panic in the graveyard, the church was aflame. All of us here were busy trying to make sure everyone got to safety. Many of us were injured in the process.
Did you see anything else? Did you see like a face or color, hair, or anything?
Well, I was going to say during this this little conversation, Gil's going to pull out that little booklet, the Goblin's Diary, and he's going to read. Go back to the part where it talks about the guy that the goblin met,
Mm-hmm.
and he's going to realize this description matches perfectly. And he's like, "Well, figure out who set the fire."
As he speaks, do I see him with the journal?
You're fairly nearby. Nothing's really blocking your path. So unless Gil wants to make a deliberate effort to hide it, then yes, you do see him flicking through the booklet.
Lucian's gonna shoot a look at Gil, narrow her eyes. How long have you had that?
I found it over there next to the tar pit.
Insight check.
All right, make an insight check. Gil, make a deception check.
I had a feeling he was gonna lie to me. Ooh, that's pretty good. I got a 19.
Oh.
She knows he's lying.
He's very offhanded about it, but you can tell from the way his eyes kind of flick around you, not quite meeting your own, that he's definitely hiding something.
Her eyes are going to intensely look at him and step towards him. I highly recommend that you tell me where you found that.
Okay, I found it in the goblin's lair behind the mirror that, by the way, you thought's trash.
Why didn't you tell us?
Because I didn't know what it was at first, and then we separated, and then this whole thing with the graveyard happened, so not exactly much time to tell
But
you.
had you tell us right when you found it, we could have been searching for this person, and none of this would have happened.
How do I know I can even trust you? You don't want to think people like
How
me.
can I know that I can trust you? You are lying. You lied to me. You lied to Zephyr. You are incompetent, obviously.
Harsh.
She snaps her head away from him and looks back at God, what was her name?
Priscilla.
Yeah, Priscilla. And offers her hand. Can I do anything for you?
Priscilla takes your hand but doesn't stand up, just takes it gently and says, "As a child of the church, it is my job to be of service to you. Uh, Most of our number will recover. My own wounds can easily be tended. But I recommend that you be safe, especially until the church's walls are fixed. There may not be any true sanctuary in the city until this criminal is captured."
Lucian is gonna turn to the Lanthrocope and kind of tone down her, because she's very cross right now. She's gonna try to tone it down a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and she's gonna say, "Did you happen to see where she went, or he, whatever?"
He shakes his head. "I didn't see them myself, just heard from the other bishops. Asked for some patrols to be around the church just to be on the safe side. Only reason there were so many guards here whenever the skeletons first started to crawl out of the tar. All we got was a description and that they were hanging around the tar pits. Uh, couldn't exactly get an arrest warrant. May have just been a mourner until all this happened."
Lucian shakes her head. No. I think it's something far worse.
No duh.
As empathetic as ever, Zephyr.
I was gonna say at this point, seeing as nobody really likes him, he's gonna head over to the tar pit. And he wants to look for. He's not gonna kill himself.
Oh boy, that would have been dark.
Alright, roll a new character, you know.
Lines of necromancy magic, like symbols put into the ground or something like that.
Okay. Make an Arcana check.
That's a total of 20.
You do not see any runic magic anywhere on what's left of the bones and bodies or in the tar itself. However, as you do you want to search multiple tar pits or just whichever one is closest?
I'm checking them all. I'm looking for
Okay.
any sign for what may.
When you approach the tar pit where the tar bone had crawled from, you notice that all of the bodies and bones are tinted a light red, almost as if sunburned. And while you can definitely tell just from the situation that necromancy magic is involved, you do not see any signs of what you're used to when it comes to such things. So this is either a type of magic you're unfamiliar with or something else altogether. But that is the most unusual thing you find in your search, is that the most powerful of the undead by far, their appearance is marred with a bright red.
Okay, at that point, he's gonna go back over to Lucian and tell her what he found, hoping to be back in her good graciousness in some way. In some way.
Lucian is not going to comment. She's just going to go straight toward the tar pit, and she's going to use her last spell slot to detect magic.
Okay. Remind me again, what does detect magic do exactly?
Well, you can see an aura around magic.
It says you sense magic in this way. You sense a presence of magic within 30 feet of you. You use this action to see a faint aura around any visible creature or object in the area that bears magic. You learn its school of magic, if any.
Okay. As you
Interestingly enough, it also penetrates barriers.
Up to a
Got
certain.
my 1 foot of stone, metal, lead, and 3 feet of wood.
okay. As you cast detect magic over the massive collective remains of the Tarbone, which several guards are already making the motions to lay the bodies back to their proper rest. As you cast detect magic, you do get a aura of necromancy magic. However, you notice that it is rapidly fading, and as you look at the aura, while it's a strange sensation. You can tell what it is as the spell reports back to you that is necromancy magic, but it feels foreign. Uh, like like hearing a familiar word and meaning, but in a different language almost.
Lucian is gonna take a deep breath and look over at Gil. Definitely necromancy. I can detect the magic. Well, what's left of it.
Well, obviously it's necromancy. Only thing I know is pretty
No, but you don't understand. What is different about it is that it feels different. And I kind of tried to explain it and like you did to him.
He understands the basic idea of magic, but he doesn't really understand.
Okay, like if what you speak Elvish, right?
Yes.
Okay. Imagine hearing a word in Elvish, but it sounds a little off, like somebody who doesn't really either speak it or like it's rushed.
Mm.
Kind of maybe a little bit like that, if I can understand the magic.
Okay.
And then she just kind of like rubs her temples and her forehead. What are we going to do? We need to find this person.
Well, we're not going to find him tonight. Not in this mess.
I hate to admit it, but you're right.
Point for Gil.
I am spent. I am emotionally distraught. I mean, look at that, and she just gestures over to the temple, trying to play off her fear. Look at that. That is just really sad.
Yeah, it burned down, didn't it?
Glad there's not a big strong guy here to help. And she
Well,
walks away.
Yeah, like while they were arguing, I was gonna walk away.
All right, so as you start to head off, Lucian falls into step behind you. Gil, do you wish to follow?
He's gonna shake his head and he's gonna follow, but he needs a drink.
All right. So, everyone but Gil already had a room set up at the Shattered Glass.
He wants to look for something a little bit nicer than that.
Make an investigation check.
$15.
After a bit of searching, you do manage to find a slightly nicer, larger, and cleaner looking dedicated inn, although this one does not provide a tavern service. And you see a illustrious sign written in large but fancy looking calligraphy that says the Creamer's Crop.
So it doesn't have its own
Tavern, no.
tavern.
Just
Yeah,
an
it is a
inn.
dedicated inn, but much higher class than the Shattered Glass.
He's looking for one that's got a tavern so he can go straight from his drinking to his room.
Unfortunately, while your search does turn up several tavern inn combinations, they are around the same level of quality as the Shattered Glass.
He'll be content with those.
All right.
Or does the Shattered Glass have the? Because it doesn't have a tavern.
Yeah.
No. The Creamer's Crop is the one that doesn't have a tavern. The Shattered Glass does, although it is a bit limited in its servings.
Okay, in that case, he'll be happy with that then. It'll suffice.
All right. In total, a room and I assume a fairly sizable ale. In total, will run you about a gold piece.
He'll pay it.
All right. So, all of you, those of you who had rooms already, return to them with fresh weights on your mind, whether that be.
Well, I was gonna say he would have handed Lucian the diary.
All right.
And Warner, it gets a little sad. You might want a tissue.
All right.
She just gives him a look and thanks him for the diary and locks her door.
Everyone returns to their rooms. Fresh weights on their mind, whether that be the opinions of the other party members, the treasure and debt weighing down their pockets, or old memories being drudged up. Lucian, for the sake of brevity, you read through, and obviously the diary has not changed since I last read its contents for the party. You read the tale of this goblin who encountered a figure that fits the description the priestess gave you, who lured him into something that just went over his head, convinced him to lure you all to the city, promising a distraction in exchange for money and the promise of loot, only for the goblin to be infected by the strange inky substance you discovered him coated in.
Is you said that before you said that there was like an ink blot in the page?
Yes,
Still fresh?
it is not fresh, but as you look it over, it is still slick. Like, you feel like with some effort you could scrape it off the page, but it's not so fresh as to be dripping. A lot of it is already seeped and stained into the page itself.
She'd probably like to scrape some of it off with her fingernail and kind of like see the substance, maybe try to see if it's something that she might be familiar with.
Great,
Right.
she's gonna get infected.
Make me an Arcana check.
Yeah, while she does that, I'm gonna tone to my ring of protection.
All right.
And then I also,
Ooh,
while they're doing that, I want to go through the pouch of money I was supposed to pay the goblin to see how much is there.
Okay.
I got a 22 on my Arcana.
All right. One at a time. Zephyr, since you guys are about to long rest, go ahead and consider yourself attuned to the ring of protection. Gil, so you said you wanted to look through the money that was supposed to be offered to the goblin.
Correct.
In total, you have been provided with 25 gold, with some extra going into like just the goblin's cut of whatever he was promising you.
That's not bad.
And for Lucian, as you reach your hand towards the page, ready to start investigating, you immediately, your mind turns to the pages you have just read, where despite the goblin not having any contact with the ink outside of using it to write, that alone was enough to turn him into the beast you saw, and you refrain from directly touching it. However, you do look it over very carefully, not just the ink stain itself, but the ink used to write the previous pages. And as you do, I would like you to make me a perception check, please.
Okie. Okay. Hopefully this dice won't fuck me. That was a journey. 17 plus stuff. So
Stuff.
22.
All right, nice. Good 22 rolls today. As you look over, You, despite the substance evading you the first time, you think carefully on everything your very magic literate family knows about the arcane, even the arcane that a scholar elsewhere may be unfamiliar with. And while this is nothing familiar to you, you are able to make some educated guesses based on similar things you've encountered. As I said when you first examined it, you are able to piece together that whatever this substance is resembles the closest word you can assign to it is essence, almost like the makeup of what someone is. But you've never seen it in a form like this, let alone having such an effect on people. As you examine it closer, uh, as you examine the largest ink stain on the final page, you see that. Um,
Mhm.
Sorry, I was checking the message you sent. You see as you look very closely at the stain of ink on the final page, you see that that ink stain, and as you look closer, all the others, deep, almost hidden within the darkness of the black substance, is a face that appears to be permanently etched in an expression of horror.
Mm,
And as
like
you
fun.
process what you're looking at, you lift your eyes from the book briefly just to give them a rest from staring so closely at a substance that you're being so cautious to not make any direct physical contact with. Your gaze goes out the window, and perched on the roof across the street from the inn, you see a figure in red armor with a gold cloak crouched on the rooftop, staring through the window.
I'd be very, very still. Kind of like as if I were meditating. And not try not to blink as I stare at it.
The figure slowly rises, and behind their back, you can see the massive curved blade of a scythe. And they raise their hand and perform a salute that is very familiar to you, as the salute known only to the royals and those close to them of the kingdom of Wicket, the elvish kingdom of magic. And there's a flash of fire, almost like that I forget the word for it, but the flash paper that ninjas use to create fire in a pinch. There's a flash of smoke and flame, and the figure vanishes.
It's called a paper bomb, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Uh, and the figure vanishes from sight. No trace
And
left
I knew
behind.
my Naruto would come in handy.
Lucian just kind of slowly closes the journal, still staring at where the figure was, and just muttered to herself, "For God's help," and try to close her eyes and try to at least get some sleep.
And then
As
there
you,
was one more thing I would like to do
by all means.
before going to sleep. After remembering Lucian's vicious phrase earlier, he's gonna
Vicious mockery, you could say.
Right?
pretty much he's gonna keep looking at this pouch they're supposed to give the goblin, and he's gonna add another 25 pieces of his own gold and head out again.
Okay. As you get perform that action and start to head towards the door, Lucian, as you settle in for a restless
And he
sleep,
is doing this quietly.
of course, as you settle in for restless sleep, you try to ignore what, for all the world, although you do not know if it is your imagination or real, you try to ignore the distant and fading into silent sounds of a metallic blade scraping against the cobblestone streets.
Mm.
It's a very
Yeah.
uncomfortable meditation.
Eventually, the sound fades into the distance, and you hear or see nothing else. Gil, as you step out, the city at night is by no means silent, with the very active nocturnal life here and the very still fresh incident at the graveyard. The city is about as bustling as it typically is during the day, just with the businesses swapped for their hours. What would you like to do?
He's gonna head back to the graveyard.
Okay. As you head to the graveyard, you find the grand majority of the guards are still there. And many of the recovered bishops, priests, and priestesses are assisting them in returning the bodies to their resting places and tending to the wounded. Um, as you approach, you see the balding reptilian male guard kind of narrow his eyes at you over his dark glasses as you approach, and holds up a hand as you cross through the threshold of the graveyard's gate. Is that something I can help you with?
Nah, just coming to pay respects to the church.
Uh, he kind of frowns a bit. And looks around at the pretty sizable guard contingent already here, and gives a slow nod. All right, no funny business.
And he's just gonna keep walking.
Okay.
And what he's looking for is like a offering box of some kind where they take donations.
As you approach the church, you can see that while the largely wooden hut, albeit large, that encompassed the church has, of course, burned down. The fiery print having long since been extinguished, and joining the rest of the wood and coating the ground as a sort of a mulch substance almost, blackened and charred. You do see that, for the most part, the statues, despite sporting some new scorch marks, have been largely unharmed. And a statue to just about every god worshipped in the region has an offering box available for it.
So he's actually going to head to the goddess of life, and he's going to he's going to look around, make sure no one's actually watching him, and try to discreetly deposit the 50 gold into the box.
All right. Make me a stealth check if you're trying to do this unnoticed.
Oh, for one.
9.
You look around and do not see anyone, and place your offering into the offering bowl in front of the statue of Shiva, the goddess of life. And you take a moment to pay your respects, and as you turn, you see slowly releasing the dark midnight blue camouflage that was shielding her into the shadows of the now completely in the open tree line that normally surrounds the church. You see Priestess Priscilla, the half chameleon, half human, step forward with a smile. She does not speak, but she clasps her hands and bows her head as you head towards the back into the graveyard.
He doesn't say anything. He doesn't do anything. He gives her a nod back, and he just heads back to the inn, where he'll then go to sleep.
All right. You all take a long rest, recovering your spell slots, your wounds, and celebrating your freshly attuned items and acquired treasure. You all awaken in the rooms of your inn. Thankfully, it seems no disasters have struck the city in your brief slumber. as you all head downstairs, what would you like to do?
Another L.
More breakfast.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Lucian will probably just order some fresh fruits and whatever non-alcoholic drink they have.
He'll also get like some meat and eggs and stuff like that.
Okay. Zephyr?
Zephyr's not going to eat breakfast. Instead, he's going to look for shop.
Okay. So, for those of you who are grabbing breakfast, um, uh, in total, the breakfast on its own will be 5 silvers. However, for the breakfast and ale for you, Gil, in total, that'll be about a gold piece.
Okay, and then he's gonna look at Lucian and say, "The hell is that diary? I told you it was sad."
She kind of tells him about the face of horror hidden in the ink blot. What do you think that means?
Can he look at this face? The
She opens up the book and
Yeah.
like tries to like without touching, like uses her
Mhm.
like end of her fork to like kind of like show
Yeah.
him the face.
Yeah, on your little,
But like without touching it.
yeah, on your gloves.
With it being pointed out to you, yes, looking closely, you are able to see what looks to be a face etched in an expression of fear and terror, almost embedded into the ink like a fingerprint.
would I recognize this as some sort of omen or sign from my people?
If it's from your people specifically, make a history check.
Because I'm also elvish, so I'm wondering if I might recognize this. $14.
Looking at the face and thinking back on similar rituals of using shapes in liquid, usually in the form of tea reading, you do not see this as being of the same ilk. As rather than it just being a rather vague expression to indicate some sort of broader meaning, as you and Lucian look over the face in the ink, it's too detailed, almost as if lovingly painted by a skilled artist before just having the ink paint bucketed onto it. You can see fine features and hair and the expression too detailed to be a simple incident of what would lead into a divination prediction.
Whoever drew this was pretty good.
Wait, this was drawn, not like with the ink itself.
Yep, this is a drawing.
To be clear, I more mean that like the quality of the expression is akin to a drawing. Like essentially, it's clearly not just a random result of the liquid mixing.
So you don't think it's like a bad warning for the ink?
The ink, I don't know, could be some form of blood, maybe.
It's
Not uncommon to write in
no,
that.
it's more than that. It's like it's almost like it has a soul.
And on that note, he's gonna remember back to the goblin corpse and remember the essence that he saw disintegrating.
Mm-hmm.
And she just gives a deep sigh and shakes her head. Well, we've got to find clues to find this man and the gold cloak. What do you think we should ask?
The gatekeepers. They had to let him in.
Did they?
Not necessarily.
Like did they?
And she kind of hesitates. Last night, before I went to sleep, I saw him outside my window on the rooftop.
Yeah, but I know these walls.
No.
So he can't just come over the wall.
He vanished. Just in a puff of flame and smoke.
That's the oldest trick in the book, sweetie.
No.
Mm.
She shakes her head. Never mind. You wouldn't understand.
I'm an elf. And he'll cast Misty Step and vanish in a puff of smoke and a little bit of flame and be in the chair next to her. I'm like, yeah, I get it.
Okay, every elf can do that, but I mean,
So that means that whoever we're looking at is an elf.
she kind
One
of
of our
pauses.
own kind.
She
I
was
was like-
about to argue with him. She was about to argue with him, but she
Doesn't even-
pauses and just kind of stares at him
Logic though.
and nervously wets her lips. I know.
Totally.
Do you know who this might be? Insight check.
She hasn't said anything.
Yeah, she has to
It's,
say
it's,
something for you to
it's,
work on.
no, it's the look. It's the look.
She definitely has a look like she wants to say something, but something is stopping her.
Okay, so with at least a description to go off of. Oh, go.
Yeah, she takes a deep breath. She just kind of pauses, like, should she tell him? Should he not tell him? Nothing.
Now, if you wish, you can make an insight check.
Or do a
Yeah,
deception.
I am.
You're not lying, so you won't do a deception. This is just to see like
How much
you know,
detail he sees in your
like
life.
how much you can get from your expression.
16. So she
you could-
obviously knows
She's
who,
sweating.
who she
Yeah,
thinks it is.
she knows, although you can't gauge just off of her reaction, like what her connection to this figure in the cloak may be. But you can tell from her reaction that like, she, at the very least, has a pretty good theory, and it is likely someone she's rather close to.
Like he's gonna drop it, knowing that this is making her uncomfortable. But he won't forget this.
She doesn't finish her breakfast.
Gil
And she leaves,
will remember this.
Gil will remember this. She leaves a 5 silver tip on the table and walks out.
And Gil picks up the rest of her breakfast, which is the fruits and vegetables, and pockets it for later.
Pears and all.
Yeah, you have assorted fruit in your inventory.
I mean,
All right. As you guys start heading out, you can see Zephyr heading off towards the market. If you guys wish to follow or attend to your own business.
Yeah, I'd like to follow the little.
Yeah, I'm gonna follow him. Because wherever this little guy goes, either trouble or great pickpocketing.
Pickpocket.
Lucian, he was there when we found the monster goblin thing, so she kind of wants to tell him what she found, and also about the magic and everything she knows, and may negate some things.
I mean, right. I'm gonna continue heading off to the market looking for a place to sell something.
All right. So you're just looking for a general shop?
I mean, looking for a shop that would take this blue sapphire I found
Okay.
found.
A jeweler,
Although a pawn shop would also.
Yeah.
or the blacksmith.
All right. Again, for the sake of brevity, so we don't spend a whole bunch of time lingering on for
Shopping episode.
yeah, so we don't for him have an episode dedicated to microtransactions. You do manage to locate a pawn shop with little trouble. In fact, most of the businesses here seem to be some form of pawn. Uh, um, and after some negotiation with the shopkeeper, you are able to negotiate a selling price of about 125 gold.
Dang.
Oh, that's rubbish.
He's just over here like, nah, it's gotta be less than that. I guess, yeah, he gives off this blue sapphire that he, quote unquote, found.
You give up the sapphire, but you now have 125 extra gold in your inventory. Is there any other business you guys would like to attend to regarding just getting items or shopping?
No.
Okay. As you guys exit the pawn shop, you find the patrol of guards led by the reptilian balding male, who's looking over the three of you as you exit with a very displeased looking expression. And as he kind of looks the three of you over and frowns, he gestures further down the road, up back towards where the inn is, and says, "The captain of the guard would like to speak with you."
Oh,
Hmm.
Is
this
there
for
a
saving your
problem?
Yeah.
asses last night.
Why would you like to speak with me?
Answering each of you separately. To you, Lucian, he shakes his head. "Much as I would like to say otherwise, no, at least not as far as I can tell. Don't give up hope yet." And to you, Gil, he does that thing of like clearly trying to maintain a straight face and like cracking his neck a bit before just ignoring you. And to you, Zephyr, he simply shrugs and says, "Presumably because you were at the scene of the crime. I was not given the details. I was simply told to fetch you."
Very well then.
All
Let's
right.
go. She's gonna go back to the inn.
He leads you up towards the inn, but then takes a left. And Zephyr, you and Lucian recognize this route you're taking. Lucian, primarily, you recognize it as the trail leading towards the graveyard. But Zephyr, as the reptilian guard, leads you towards a very familiar to you small stone building. You recognize that he's leading you towards the guard's treasury.
Hmm.
He approaches and gives a very light knock with just the barest trace of two knuckles, as if he doesn't really want to make full bare-fisted contact with the door. And the door swings open. You guys are confronted with a very large, rounded figured, seemingly human at a glance figure, dressed in a exotic and elaborate looking black and purple dress uniform, clearly military, but none of you can quite put like a country to the uniform. Although you acknowledge most of the Shadow Lily soldiers are dressed in just whatever colors they happen to like, rather than a distinctive uniform. So you simply chalk it up to that being the local culture. A
Out of
large.
curiosity, I was gonna say, is this someone that was like impressive to Gil? Or is this just like someone
Physically
who
or
was
like
overweight?
I think like in a rank.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah, like,
Rank
that's what I like.
impressive,
Physically or in
but
terms of rank?
both.
Like, probably a little bit of
In
both.
terms of rank, you can tell from the emblem gleaming on his broad chest that he is the captain of the guard, which puts him essentially in a local military but not quite true military department. And looking at his figure, you can tell he's got some muscle to him, but is rounded, especially around the stomach, seemingly having let himself go in recent times. Continuing on his appearance, around his head, you can see a very heavily bejeweled white and purple striped turban wrapped around his head. And as he smiles broadly, you see very somewhat scattered and crooking, heavily sharpened teeth, indicating that he is clearly not entirely human, although at a glance you can't immediately put a species to him. And he smiles and gestures into the Zephyr to you very intimately familiar room. Come in, come in.
Yes, the guard said that you wanted to see us.
He gives a nod. Yeah, that's right.
What do you need?
Gil goes in with this air of military power. He's going to actually try to put off his air of this is someone who's important.
Make me an intimidation check.
Lucian's just gonna yeah, right. Hey, not bad at all.
21.
You strut in with the all of the decorum that your class has bred into you. And you can see the reptilian male kind of instinctively straightens a bit almost. But to your surprise, the new person who you have not been introduced to yet, although you can tell he's the captain, seems largely unfazed.
Oh.
Ooh.
So
My name is Lucian. I'm from, I'm sure you know where I'm from.
He smiles and shakes your hand in both of his large meaty fists. Yeah, I do. Pleasure.
Just probably shakes with the whole thing because she's so little.
Being this close to him, you notice a very distinctive and slightly familiar smell to him. Although you can't just add an immediate put an exact term to what it is you're smelling. But he does have a distinctive scent to him that's familiar to you in some way.
What is your name, Captain?
Name's Captain Scuttle Scutwork. Just call me Scutwork.
Scutwork? How do you spell that?
Out of character, it is SCUT work. And go ahead, and anyone who just happens to be particularly curious, make me a history check.
Well, I'm proficient.
Yeah, so if anyone wants to, make me a history check.
I'm good.
Ooh, that was a journey.
Zephyr doesn't really want to be here. I'm back at the scene of the crime.
23.
Gil, you don't recognize the family name, but you do recognize that sort of naming structure. It is the naming structure used by what is considered traditionally civilized trolls use. A very simplistic, rapid-fire naming scheme of amalgamating words in common that are somewhat more for convenience than taste, translated from undercommon. And Lucian, you have actually heard the family name, albeit somewhat in passing. The Scutwork family has been captaining the Shadow Lily Guard for quite some time. And although they don't have necessarily any impressive feats or land under their belt, their service, especially for just the general people and especially to foreign travelers, has gained them some recognition. They tend to have a history of helping travelers coming through the city, and then the travelers paying them back later, which helps them build respect that would be akin to nobility were it not for their lack of lands and titles. And you do know that because of these feats, the Shadow Lily Queen is in close contact with them and considers them deeply worthy of respect and is likely on the verge of granting a title at some point.
Oh, sorry. My aunt was like, she screamed because she was watching a scary movie, and I was asking if she was okay.
It's all good.
She was watching a scary movie, and I was like, "Oh my god, are you okay?"
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
understandable.
Sorry about that. Okay, cool. Lucian tries to shake his hand back in the best way that she can. Well, it's a pleasure to finally meet you.
He smiles and repeats, "Pleasure here as well." And now that you remember who he is and what family he comes from, you recognize that scent as just the ever lingering scent of troll. Trolls tend to have a very distinctive smell, both
Yeah.
from where they typically live and just the way their physique is.
I get that.
Literally putting troll smell in my room with stinky wait.
um, uh, and the captain, Captain Scutworth, leans down to you, Zephyr. And what about you, little fella?
Hmm. Not sure. Frankly, I'm not. I question why I was called here.
He smiles and pats you on the shoulder and says, "You came highly recommended." And you see his head almost imperceptibly towards where you know the vault is.
Hmm. I see.
He stands up and holds out a hand to you, Gil. And what about you, Mr. Rank and File?
So he will give him one of those very high, sophisticated military handshakes.
Hmm. Yes, you know.
Seeing your
And
stance
was,
and posture. Oh, you first.
I was gonna say, and then he's gonna say, "So, what exactly is it that you need of us?"
Seeing your stance and posture, he actually returns the gesture. Although you notice he's a lot more chill and relaxed about it, like clearly just going through the motions without feeling that they're entirely necessary. And he goes to sit back behind the desk, allowing, gesturing to some chairs arranged for all of you to sit in. Those of you who have not been here already take in the sight of a colorful tropical bird in a cage nearby, just preening its feathers, and a fat, slumbering warg at the side of the desk.
Lucian's gonna delicately take a seat and keep an eye on that war.
Hmm.
All right.
And Gil's just gonna stand. He does not take the chair.
All right. Zephyr?
Can I reach the chair?
Yes, you can. You are short, but you're not microscopic.
Lucian just gives him a little boost.
Like, nah. Yeah, alright.
Piggyback onto the chair. All right. As all of you make yourselves relatively comfortable, he nods to you, Gil, and says, "Well, first and foremost, I know it's not much in the way of pomp and circumstance, but," he pulls a few small leather sacks from behind the desk and tosses one to each of you. "Don't let it be said that your help against the Tarbone went completely unnoticed." And he gives a very like the wink of a father sneaking his kid candy under the nose of the kid's mother.
Lucian's gonna give a faint chuckle. Well, that's very appreciated.
Hmm.
She's
And
not gonna count it in front of
Gil's
him. She's just
gonna
gonna put it in her bag.
pocket it and just keep watching because he knows gifts come with a price.
What do you? How much did he give us?
Zephyr, you are the only one to file through the sack and see that it is. Actually, make me a perception check real quick.
Perception. That will be 14.
Looking over the sack and its contents, in total, it seems each of you have been given 25 gold pieces. Not only are you somewhat disappointed in the amount, but Zephyr, as you examine it closer, you actually recognize the make of these coins. Rather than being traditionally minted, you recognize from the daughter of the man who taught you everything you know about being a rogue. You recognize the marks of a false alchemy coin.
Oh.
Traditionally known as fool's gold.
Hmm. And what are we supposed to do with these?
He just smiles and says, last I checked, money is spent for goods and services.
And what goods are we doing?
He holds up his hands and shakes his head. I ain't here to recruit no one. I just wanted to offer what little the Confederacy can offer you. And you notice as he talks that he like kind of cracks his jaw every so often, almost as if his speech is physically impeded by the strange amalgamation of human and troll parts, especially directed around his mouth.
Hmm. Zephyr's going to put the gold on the ground.
You see, as you do, you just like throw it, or more just like gently set it.
Just no, I wouldn't. He'll just lightly place the bag on the ground.
You see that he does look genuinely somewhat hurt, and shakes his head sadly. Well, I suppose that's fair. Really, we should be offering you more, but we quite literally can't afford it.
Hmm.
Yeah, I was gonna say, by this point, Gil's gonna be curious and he's gonna look at his own gold to see why Zephyr is acting this way.
You can make a perception check yourself to see if you can spot the signs of fool's gold, but you see that there is a measly 25 gold pieces.
14 as well.
Uh, you're not quite as versed in alchemy, so you don't notice anything strange about the coins, but you are put off by the low amount.
But he's gonna shrug and money's money.
So is it wanted?
One more time, sorry, you were cutting out on my end.
But it was quiet. Oh,
Hello.
oh.
Can you
All right,
hear
you're
him?
good. What were you saying?
Okay. She just gives a soft gracious smile, and she you know straightens her back a little bit in a very poised, you know, uh she was raised that way kind of thing. And she says, since you're the captain of the guard, maybe you have heard um of the criminal that was responsible for the fire in for the temple.
He nods and taps his large, meaty finger on the desk. Yeah, I've heard about the same story that most of the townsfolk have. Figure in red armor with a gold cloak. But it's only been a day. That's all we got to go on so far. That's
No one
also.
noticed him come in through the front gate or anything. You
He
probably truly have
stops.
to let him in.
Uh, he kind of stops his drawling and shakes his head. Already checked all the guards, unless one of them managed to sneak under my nose. And he kind of gives a little sniff. As far as I can tell, no one on the inside helped them in.
In all fairness, Gil, he could have come from the forest.
This whole city's walled. There's no way for them to get in.
Well,
Well,
What
like
I know about any sewers,
like there's.
Make a history check.
I just wanted to point out that, and she wants to give this information to the captain too. We had figured out that may think that this person is an elf, and as you know, most elves can misty step. So perhaps
but only to a
this
spot that
could
they can
happen.
see.
Well,
Well,
through the open
That's
gate.
It's
part
a
of the skill.
start.
But it was a
And you see,
17.
all right. With a 17, while the city does have a relatively intricate sewer system, you do not know of any ways that that could be used to secretly enter the city without being spotted. The defenses, whenever this city was Geogrin, were pretty airtight.
I do like where Gil is heading. Captain, I I assume that you do have a maybe some crime because that has happened here. Maybe some thieves. Usually, do you have anything like that?
You see, he's noting down the information you guys have already provided, and he thinks for a moment before nodding. Well, we had a string of petty thefts by a small little fella in a cloak, but doesn't match the description of our perp. Nor can we really associate petty theft with grand acts of necromancy.
No, we also took care of that for you. It was just a little goblin. That was not a problem. He was living in an old warehouse that we were
Hmm.
investigating. No
That
problem.
your guards didn't know about while they were walking around
Yeah,
outside of
the
it.
guards
As he
and
gives a side look to the reptilian.
yeah.
The reptilian kind of narrows his eyes at you. You see the captain just kind of smirks a little bit, and the lieutenant shakes his head and says, "The warehouse was simply being used to store weapons that were no longer of use to the Confederacy. It is no more the fault of me and my patrol that a goblin managed to infiltrate its walls than it is of the gates guard for the goblin getting past them. We're clearly dealing with some masterminds here, able to organize something like what we saw at the graveyard."
With all due respect, Captain, that sounds like an excuse.
Ooh,
And she gives a
ooh.
polite smile and kind of like puts her hair behind her ear and gives him a pretty.
uh, the reptilian gives you like just all three of you just the biggest expression of burning passionate hate.
What did I do?
Uh, but Captain
You're small
Scuttwork,
and cloaked, so it could have been you.
uh, Captain Scuttwork chuckles and waves a large meaty hand dismissively. "Lieutenant Manfred, you're excused." And the reptilian glares at all of you over his dark glasses before storming out of the treasury and slamming the door behind him. He,
Captain,
uh,
I have a little proposition for you.
he smiles and leans forward. "I'm listening."
We have already taken care of, you know, the undead and the goblin. What if maybe you can help us catch this other criminal?
Or if we can help
Or
you
we,
catch it.
yeah, like what if we can help you catch this Kunamono? Like a partnership.
He smiles and holds up a hand. While I appreciate the humility, I will agree with my lieutenant that this is a bit above city guard pay grade. I will accept the offer of help if you're willing to hear out a proposition of my own.
And she
And
takes his hand.
I was gonna say,
Well,
Gil's not gonna be surprised by this because, as he already said earlier, well, to himself at least, that gifts are not free.
I think that
Hmm.
So he knew that something was that he want that the captain wanted something from us.
absolutely. I think that something can be arranged.
Zephyr?
Hmm. Well, that depends on what my recommendation, what what the one that recommend me to do.
He waves a hand and says, Rest assured that's already been taken care of. Everything's been vetted. And he looks over all three of you and says, Let me be perfectly clear. This is not a hostage situation. We'd have offered you more, and he gestures to those of you who are still holding your sacks of gold. But I will be frank, if this stays in this room. And he kind of glares at the tropical bird, who kind of covers its head with its feathers as if to cover its ears. The Confederacy is in some dire straits, economically speaking, and nobody's quite sure where the money's going. That's why I do not think it'd be the fault of the guards, but more those who handle the coin.
Do you not have a treasury?
He smiles and gestures. You're standing in it.
Hmm.
She takes a look around. Oh,
Where's the
Hmm.
He
treasure?
nods.
Hmm.
He jerks a large, meaty thumb over his shoulder, and you can see a hallway leading into the back. But just from where you're standing, you do not see what's in the hallway. And he nods to your reaction, Lucian. Aye, the situation is far from desirable. In fact, many of us, guards and people alike, suspect the Queen herself may have something to do with it. Personally, I think that's a load of, if you'll pardon my language, horse shit.
he gives a light chuckle.
Like it.
Well, what about the treasurer? Somebody who's in charge of the money, who maybe there's some books we can look at, maybe like receipts. You have like somebody who pays attention to that?
And who has access to these vault to your vault?
Right.
Hmm.
Uh, to each of you, to you, Gil, he says, Nobody goes in the vaults but me, the guards who work in this building, who are vetted by me, and the Queen.
And nobody else can get in there.
Hmm.
He smiles and says, I think your friend, and he gestures to Zephyr, can attest that the defenses are quite secure.
Lucian snaps her head to Zephyr. What did you do?
Hmm.
Relax, he's not in any trouble.
I see.
Shakes her head at the captain. Well, what do you? Maybe we can seek an audience with the queen.
He
Maybe see if
smiles.
she knows.
He smiles and leans forward. You're way ahead of me, miss. My proposition was simply that you remain in the city for a few more days while she heads here from the capital. She would likely be interested in the acts of necromancy in the graveyard, and it sounds like you have more information from one night than my guards could gather in the time it'd take her to get here.
Well, after looking at the guards, that's not very surprising.
Oof.
That's fair.
There's actually a little chuckle coming from Lucian.
He
Maybe
smiles.
I could give her a few lessons on guardsmanship.
He waves a hand and says, they may not seem like much to a noble, but rest assured their loyalty goes without question. There's a reason I trust any of them to not be in on this little scheme.
Have they all been questioned though? Even though you trust them.
He nods.
Think that is important.
He nods. As I said, everyone, top to bottom, has been dressed down for any connections. They're all just as confused as I am.
I was going to say, including yourself.
He raises an eyebrow and tilts his head to the side.
What do you mean?
Well,
you have like
you have to.
gaps of memory?
Well, everybody has to be questioned. Even the higher rank nobles don't get away without it.
We need to go as far as that, but maybe you have like gaps of memory. Maybe
Other than the occasional food coma, can't say my sleeping's been unusual, but if you'd like to see me get a thorough dressing down, other than what my wife gets to see, you can wait a few days and I'd be happy to ask the queen herself.
I think that's fair.
He was just asking a simple question. Because usually in his area, they start with the higher up people and then work their way down.
Yeah, you've already gotten the vibe here that the guards here, at the very least, you do not know at an immediate thought how their actual military compares, but you get the impression their guards are more just a militia of people who just genuinely want to protect the city and get some training and armaments, which likely explains their colorful lack of uniformity. And as he leans forward, he says, but rest assured, we're not taking hostages. If you're uncomfortable having an audience with the Queen Shadow Lily, I can see to it that you're out of the city before she gets here.
Not at all. I'm familiar with, queens, and she gives a little slight look at Gil King. That would be as the captain. I'd be more than happy to meet her.
He smiles and turns his gaze to the rest of you.
By all means, let's meet the queen.
Well, while y'all are willing to meet this queen, I don't see any point in me.
And Gil's gonna put his hand on the little guy's back. Like, you've obviously been doing a lot while you've been away. We need to keep you're good here. You're good here.
I'm good here.
Little lizard person. You're already. You should be invested in this. You are there from the start. Curious?
Invested in what? Some evil man or something of the sort is doing something nefarious when it doesn't concern me any bit. When I have my own goals.
He obviously wiped out multiple clans of goblins. Used a goblin.
What?
I'm pretty sure he could use
goblin. I'm a kobold.
Yeah, but you're the same size as a little goblin. So who's to say he can't use you too if you get too far away?
To Gil's point, Zephyr. Do you not have family or friends that you need to protect?
He's going to look with dead eyes.
And there's always more chance of money.
And what money would that be? This fake gold that they gave us?
That gets Lucian's attention, and she looks back at the captain. Say,
The captain has a very guilty look and says, "Rest assured, the money is good and spendable, but," and he kind of winces a bit, "we don't have the money to pay our guards, let alone mercenaries. So we
Then
have
why
one of
don't
our."
you just say so?
He gestures to the sack of coin you're holding and says, "The queen does not like those who assist her to go unrewarded. As I said, the gold is capable of being spent, it's just not real gold. We have our
insight.
alchemists produce it."
I don't know if I trust that. Can I insight check him?
Absolutely.
Okay. Don't fuck me. 16?
He seems to be genuinely telling the truth. The Confederacy is literally just so poor right now that they can barely pay their soldiers, let alone adventurers. So he has this alchemist he speaks of produce fake gold that can still be spent just so that people can get paid at all.
She
And he seems genuinely guilty about deceiving you, even if the deception is relatively light.
she relaxes a little bit. Well, I still accept. Thank you.
Though Gil, understanding the whole needing to pay soldiers, will put the coin purse back on the table and say, "It might be spendable, but pay your actual soldiers. I have enough."
Lucian seems a little impressed by this. Her as well.
Zephyr.
What?
You don't have to. Since the rest of the party did something, they're returning their gold. Seeing as from what you guys were able to piece together, the Confederacy is in incredibly dire economic straits.
Well, I mean, I already put my gold on the floor. I didn't want it.
Fair enough.
Lucian picks up the
I
bag
mean,
that he
it's
put
been on the
down.
ground this entire time. He did that like one moment he found out.
He picks it up and puts it on the desk and gives a smile. I agree with Gil, which is really weird to say. I think that this is better for paying the people to protect us. I mean, your people.
Including Mr. Lizard Man out there.
He chuckles a bit and gratefully, but seeming a bit put out, takes the leather sacks of coin back, seeming just as frustrated as you guys can presume the soldiers are by the garbage situation they're in terms of their money.
She reaches out and puts her hand on like his wrist and gives him a really kind look. You know, if it's that you want to make sure that we are, compensated, maybe there are some other things that you can provide, like maybe one free night at an inn or something.
He smiles and nods to Zephyr. "If you're all willing to wait for your audience, I can ensure your beds and breakfasts are free of charge."
What about Ale?
He kind of chuckles and kind of lightly punches you in the arm from across the table. But for someone who's half troll, it's like he fucking socked you. And says,
I don't know.
"My
I'm as big
kind
as
of
he is.
noble. I'll see what I can do."
Yeah, and then
Hmm.
maybe one day we'll have some friendly drinking.
We're currently staying at the Shattered Glass. If you want to maybe talk to the innkeeper and tavern keeper.
He gives a nod. I'll be sure to do that. And he looks to you, Zephyr. If you fancy yourself more soldier of fortune than a soldier, is there anything I can offer you that would grab your attention?
The only thing I can see that you can offer is maybe clearing the debt with our associate.
You can see his eyes narrow, not necessarily aggressively, but more that kind of like he wasn't expecting that. And you can see like the kind of trace of a grin. And he says, "I'll run it by him, but you should probably know that the debts with him tend to run rather deep."
Well, I'll be at the end waiting for your answer then.
And
He
Gil's going to be very curious about this. Like, what debt? You haven't been gambling, have you?
he holds up a big meaty hand and reaches down to pat the large fat warg, who kind of slowly looks around and sniffs and kind of curiously sniffs at your feet, Zephyr. Not aggressively, just like almost as if it vaguely recognizes you. And the captain speaks. The alchemist who double functions as our treasurer while the Confederacy works through its economic straits found your little friend trying to raid the largely empty vault.
Zephyr.
I wouldn't really say friend. I would say acquaintance.
As I said, he's not in trouble. The alchemist is a forgiving fella.
Oh no, he's just disappointed that Zephyr got caught.
Well, I mean,
Lucian just shake
I
her
don't
head.
know.
Well, if you need anything, you know where we are. And if I'm not found at the Shattered Glass, I'll probably be helping rebuild and help at the temple.
He gives a nod, sort of half bowing while still in his chair. And Gil, you immediately can tell from just his general demeanor and posture that part of seemingly having recently put on weight is likely being a former fighter who has now been delegated to a desk job since he got too high up in the chain of command. But he gives a half bow from his seat and says, I'd be mighty grateful. If there's anything I can offer, just say the word. I'll be here.
Yes, sir.
Lucian is gonna grab Zephyr the shoulder
What?
and drag him out. Like a mother scorning her child.
Wow.
Gonna get down to his level and look into his eyes. So that is where you went.
Yes. Well, unlike you, I don't just run into danger as soon as I see it.
That seemed pretty dangerous to me.
Dangerous as.
Point.
So.
At least we were there to save people's lives. While you were after what? Gold? Greed?
Gold can go a long way.
Your greed will get the better of you if you don't get the better.
Better at what? Better at stealing? I already planned to, but right now.
Better person, lizard thing, whatever you are.
A better person. I don't see that happening.
A lot of things can happen in a few days. You'd be surprised. And she's gonna straighten back up. It is up to you if you want to continue. She's
And
gonna walk
behind
away.
her back, Gil's gonna give him a thumbs up.
Yeah.
All right. So, as you guys return to the Shattered Glass, for the sake of brevity, assuming you guys do intend to wait for the Queen to arrive from the capital, you have several days to yourself. Is there any business you'd like to attend to before the
Yeah.
Queen arrives?
I would like to get a long sword from the blacksmith. Maybe have one specially made.
Okay. Any special properties you want for the longsword, or just
I mean, she wants it pretty, like maybe like some designs on it. I don't think that they have the capabilities to make it magical.
Yeah, you've seen very little in the way of magic weaponry around here.
Yeah, so she'll be happy with like pretty designs and maybe like a pretty handle, fancy dancy
Uh,
things.
so for a custom, rather on the ornate side, but still at the end of the day just a longsword, will run you about 17 gold.
Okay.
And can it have a very familiar looking blue sapphire in it?
That would be hilarious.
I'll tell you when when you get the sword. Does anyone else have any, including you, have any other business to attend to?
But yeah, I was gonna say, Gil's gonna be at the graveyard, helping clear rubble and rebuilding, because he thinks that he could at least put his strength to good use there.
While her sword is being made, she is gonna, go to the people, you know, preaching the good, the gospel of Shiva, and putting, putting herself out there and, you know, trying to
Mm.
make light of the situation and try to be as kind as she can.
Make me a religion check. And Gil, what would you say you were doing?
Yeah,
Clearing and helping rebuild the temple.
Okay.
Community service, basically.
Okay. Nice. 20. Dirty
All
20.
right. All right. Gil, as you're helping repair the temple and repair damage to the graveyard, a few days into your wait, you see Lucian delivering a sermon with the sort of side help from Priestess Priscilla about the goddess Jiva, who you recognize as the goddess of life, who you have recently paid tithes to. And Lucian gives a very beautiful, impassioned speech about the value of life and protecting it in times like this. And several people, many of whom you can see are visibly wearing paraphernalia of the life goddess, join in and celebrate as Lucian's impassioned speech comes to a close. And overall, it was a very moving sermon. And the priestess gives a clap and a smile as Lucian descends from the sort of impromptu stand soapbox of sorts while you continue to help her with repairs.
He's impressed, but he's not going to show it.
Zephyr, do you have anything you'd like to do during this time?
In
no stealing, please.
I mean, not gonna lie, for the most part, I was thinking, all they're doing is this charity work and all that, and I want to go off and steal. well, for now I have I have a good amount of gold, so I'm not worried about that. It's just
He's
was
gonna be
this.
pulling pranks like the goblin, taking people's walking sticks and stuff.
No, he's not malicious like that. He's just if there's nothing that benefits him, he has no interest in it. But hmm, I would like to see the associate man, the alchemist.
Okay. You return to the treasury a couple days into your wait, and you see the captain at the desk just running over some paperwork, and he kind of looks up as
What? What'd you say?
just the captain looks up as you enter. Since you're looking for
Oh,
the alchemist specifically, I figured you were just going to walk in.
yeah. I guess as I'm walking in, I'm just be like, "Do you have an answer for me?"
He kind of glances around as if making sure that you weren't followed. Not necessarily like conspiratorially, just a sort of like brief glance just to be sure. And he shakes his head. I do have an answer of sorts, but unfortunately, you're gonna have to wait. Says he'll meet you along with the queen.
I'll be honest, I'm not too happy with said answer, but deal's a deal, so I'll wait for now.
Uh, as you turn to walk out, he calls out to you and says, if it's any consolation, you shouldn't be too afraid of the alchemist. He likes his deals and his underhanded games, but he's never done anyone any harm. If it weren't for him, the Confederacy would have been collapsed to outside invaders long ago. Not a coin to our name.
Hmm. Well, I was never afraid of this alchemist. I just simply made a deal, and I wanted to follow through it. But I also don't want to be here as long as I need to be.
He gives a slow nod and says, guess we'll have to see how it plays out.
Yes, so.
All right. Lucian, you return for your sword a few days after ordering it, and you do find dangling from a well-made, if seemingly a somewhat last-minute addition, keychain that has a very familiar-looking sapphire dangling from it.
It is beautiful. I love it. And I pay
The
him my 12 gold. I give him a 5 gold tip.
the orcish blacksmith smiles and happily takes it and waves you out friendly. Uh, So, does anyone else have any business to attend to before the queen arrives?
Well, he
Listen.
still wanted. Oh, Gil wanted to have that a drinking day with Captain Guard after his shift.
Okay. Do you have anything specifically planned, or is it more just kind of for the sake of doing it?
See which one can hold the most.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Just for the sake of the thing.
All right. So, if there's gonna be a drinking contest, we will make 3 Constitution saves each, and it's essentially a best 2 out of 3 kind of deal.
Okay.
Ooh.
Hey, I'm gonna watch him.
Okay, when you're ready.
All right. First on my end is an 18.
Oh, so close.
So it's a 16 plus my Constitution at +4, which is a 20.
All right.
Well,
Zephyr, you and Lucian, as you relax
actually,
in the.
it's a con. He said con save, right? So it'll be +6, right? Your proficiency in con saves on con.
Oh, you're right. So that's a 22.
So you guys watch as the captain and Gil have their planned drinking day. The first tankard of ale goes down, and Gil seems to be holding strong. Gil, make me another con save.
Oh.
Doesn't sound good.
No, it doesn't. It's an 8.
A natural
Uh,
2.
as the second tankard goes down, you notice Gil starting to get a little on the wobbly side while the captain is still holding completely unmoved.
Right.
Last one.
Just 2 out of 3, man. Come on. Do it good.
They tie.
16.
You watch as both half troll and elf down the last tankard, slam it onto the counter, and stare at each other as if daring the other person to back down first. And then finally, there's an extended pause as everyone in the tavern, yourself included, stare. Gil finally slumps onto the counter with a clang.
For the first time, you actually hear Lucian laugh.
The captain stands up and holds his still somewhat frothy tankard up, and many of the tavern's patrons, several of which are guards, cheer and clap. And the captain gives a few bows before patting Gil on the back on the way out, giving a nod to the two of you as he exits the shattered glass.
I was gonna say
Like give him
the,
like
the
a little
lizard
golf
the,
clap.
the lizard guy didn't see this, right?
No, you do not see him present in the tavern.
Oh, thank God.
You're taking it so personally.
Yeah,
All
as
right.
the captain leaves, he's gonna go. Good drink.
All
It's
right.
like you go to pat his shoulder and you miss.
All right. So, if that's everyone's business, uh,
Yep.
the the captain keeps his word. Food, drink, and bed are all accounted for, as you guys are able to spend several uh, somewhat restless and uneasy, but safe nights at the inn. There seems to be no further incidences in the city. Occasionally, the lieutenant or the captain himself will come by to give you an update. As of several days since the incident, there has unfortunately been no progress in even finding a lead on this cloaked figure, as if he's simply vanished overnight.
How's the
Uh,
temple looking?
the temple, with several days of effort, thanks to the relatively simplistic construction and many different uh, builders from many different cultures putting their heads together, managed to get the temple. The basic skeleton has started to come together, but it's not nowhere near the relatively nice looking building it once was, but it's on the road to recovery.
He's pleased.
Um, and eventually, about 6 days in, you guys receive a message, written rather than in person as normal, from the captain that says, Zephyr's room, midnight.
Oh. I go to hide all my weapons.
Lucian looks at the paper and just like, does this look like maybe the half troll wrote it?
Trying to see if it's fake.
Yeah.
Make me a. I'll call this an insight check.
Okay. Come on, don't fuck me. Oh, nice. 19?
All right. As you receive the message from a relatively official looking guard, you look over the handwriting, and while you're not intimately familiar with his handwriting, having only seen it in passing, uh, it does seem legitimate. Nothing immediately suspicious about it, although the lack of further elaboration is in itself suspicious.
And the fact they're asking us to meet in Zephyr's room.
Yeah.
Zephyr, are you gonna try to kill us?
Zephyr, did you do something bad again?
If I was gonna try to kill you, I would have already tried. And to my knowledge, I haven't done anything. But
You're really adorable. You know that just like a head.
okay. Guess he's gonna go to his room. Wait for whoever's coming.
Yeah, about maybe 20 minutes before, I guess, when she thinks it's gonna be time, she's gonna, knock on the door softly.
Okay. Zephyr, as you wait, Lucian knocks on the door. Do you let the elf in?
Sure.
And Gil, when would you like to?
I was gonna say about 10 minutes, but he's gonna decide to pull a little prank on this little guy, and he's gonna knock on the door while standing off to the side where he can't be seen, and wait for the door to open.
All right, make me a stealth check.
Natural one.
17.
All right. Zephyr, passive perception.
16, just barely.
Right. You hear a knock on the door, and swinging the door open, you do not see anything.
And then all of a sudden, he's gonna pop out and go boo, and then give him one of those head noogies and go in.
Can I shoot an arrow at him?
You can if you want.
I would like, as he's kind of walking past me, I'd like to shoot an arrow and aim around his head.
All right, make me a. I'll treat it as an attack roll, so go ahead and just make an attack roll.
Yeah. I don't want to.
Shoot me.
I'm not trying to hit him.
You will die.
I will die. Oh, really now?
Really?
I mean, we'll see. Alright, let's see here. Attack roll. Oof. 11.
All right. As you fire, are you using a bow or a crossbow, just for flavor?
I'll use my bow.
Okay. Gil, as you walk in, you just hear like a kind of faint sound of a string being drawn, and an arrow impacts the wall in the direction you were walking, having gone just past your ear.
And he's not even gonna flinch. He's gonna missed.
What?
He's not even going to flinch. Cut out on my
Oh.
end too, but I was able to get
I was
the
gonna
gist.
say he's not gonna flinch. He's just gonna say you missed.
Oh,
And
trust.
shoot the arrow.
If I wanted to hit you, I would have aimed for something bigger. Well, that's kind of hard since you have such a big head.
He's gonna chuckle, but he's gonna keep the arrow
The
and pick his
listener is
teeth.
right. You do have a big head.
Oof.
Yeah, he doesn't phase him. He's just gonna pick his teeth with the arrow.
Can I say that also when I was at the blacksmith, do you think that he may have had like half plate armor?
Yeah, they have a wide variety of things, just none of it's like particularly magical or notable. So yes, they for half plate. For a full set of half plate armor, that's going to be 750 gold.
No, just the top half. Yeah, just the without the legs.
The breastplate.
All right, give me just a moment.
Commonly known as half plates.
So just the breastplate will cut the price close to half, to leaving it at 400 gold.
Yeah,
Is it
it's
anything I can
expensive.
afford?
One more
Let me
time?
look and see what I'm gonna see what I can afford on the. I found the thing where I can
Yeah.
see what I can afford. Trying to up my armor class.
We could always break back
I
into the
mean-
warehouse. They had armor, I think.
Warehouse.
Yeah, they did have armor back at the warehouse. I didn't think of that. Let me see here.
And he did whisper that.
She considers it and then just shakes her head.
Sell the rest for charity.
Oh.
Because it's good. Oh wait, you didn't say that part to them.
Okay, scale mail is 50 gold. I have 40 gold though.
Yeah, 42.
Well, I was gonna say, Gil will loan you the other. How much more do you need?
Just 10.
8. Well, they don't have 42, so 8.
That's 42.
Okay, then he'll loan you the other 8.
Okay.
So,
All right. So you have acquired scale armor. For descriptive sake, because scale mail in this setting actually looks a little different. Scale mail, while you can request custom paint, by default, it comes in a sort of reddish orange, kind of rusted tint. It's not rusty, but it has that kind of tint to it. But the scales are iron tough. And it's basically made of, to picture the pattern, it's almost interlocking fish scales.
Or looks like dragon scales.
Yeah, not quite dragon scales. They are distinctly fish-like. Yeah, so, all right, so scale mail. So, with your business concluded, you guys, with 10 minutes till your meeting time with the queen, 5 minutes go by, another 5, and then almost at the exact stroke of midnight, you hear a knock at the door.
I don't answer it.
You don't?
Gil will go.
All right. Gil, you open the door, and all of you see 3 figures. Zephyr, you recognize one as the alchemist, Christoph Rejkar.
Guessing one of them's queen. He'll say,
Looking at the other 2, you see a tall humanoid, but you cannot see any part of them underneath thick, full plate, pitch black armor. And a very nasty looking pickaxe is slung in a sort of half holster, half sheath on their back. And they just kind of survey the room almost cautiously. And in between the alchemist and the knight, you see a small girl, about 16 from the looks of her, with auburn hair pulled back in a long ponytail that goes down to her waist, and simple leather shirt and shorts that looks a bit thicker than what you'd expect from just peasant clothing, but she's clearly not exactly wealthy. And she kind of nervously looks over the 3 of you before kind of taking a breath and straightening up. The 3 of you who are supposed to have an audience with Queen Shadow Lily.
correct.
that would be us.
She holds out a hand in a very strict and business-like tone. All of the earlier nervousness starting to kind of get hidden beneath a veil of professional confidence. My name is Pipa Shyness. I am the squire to the queen.
Squire.
She gestures to the figure in black. This is Graham Wickle, the finest of the Shadow Lily Knights. The knight does not gives only a almost imperceptible nod of the head to indicate that he was even addressed.
And Gil is very impressed with this guy.
Mm.
And finally, she gestures to the person already familiar to Zephyr, but unfamiliar to the rest of you. And this is the Shadow Lily alchemist, Christoph Rezkar. The frail, elderly-looking, obviously a wizard from the looks of him, gives a bow.
You know, I was sure he was the knight.
It's a pleasure to meet all of you. Where are we to go to meet the queen?
Piper speaks up. Well, the queen was planning to have it here, if that's amendable.
It is.
But of course,
By all means, come in.
She clears her throat. My lady! And you guys hear a creak above you.
Oh.
And all of you turn your attention upwards to see a humanoid figure crouched in the rafters of the room, staring down at you with glowing feline eyes. And that's where we're going to end tonight's session.
Wow.
Interesting.
Gil is even more impressed now. Like, he thought the knight was impressive. The queen is even more impressive.
Yeah.
Wait, how much of that did she see? Did she see the whole arrow shot at anything?
You have no idea when she got into the room.
More stuff, but now my armor class is at 18, so.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. All right, so for wrapping up the stream, with the Tarbone defeated, you guys have started helping this the Shadow Lily city of Purrha recover from its previous damages. Meeting up with the half troll captain of the guard, you have made an arrangement to meet with Queen Shadow Lily, who will offer you whatever help she can in the case in exchange for your help in return. The details of which will be discussed in Zephyr's room. That the Queen managed to infiltrate seemingly ahead of her itinerary of sorts.
Entourage.
Yeah, her entourage. And with that, tomorrow we will pick up at your meeting with Queen Shadow Lily.
Wait, tomorrow?
Or Tuesday, I mean, sorry.
Don't
Think
get
Those
so
start with a T.
excited.
Tomorrow.
Sorry, those start with a T. That was my fault. So that is where we'll pick up. All of you watching, we will see you next week.
Yeah.